We wake up before the world fully forms around us, and yet something is already wrong. There is no visible threat, no immediate danger, and still the chest feels tight, the mind restless, the spirit unsettled. It's not loud, it doesn't scream, it hums quietly beneath the surface, like a warning we can't quite decode. And so we reach for distraction, our phone, our habits, our routines, anything to escape the feeling without ever confronting it. But the truth is far less mysterious than we pretend. This weight we carry into the morning is not placed upon us by fate. It is built piece by piece through the way we think, the way we live, and the way we avoid what demands our attention. As Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Yet most mornings we wake up already surrendered, because we've trained ourselves to do so. We are not victims of anxiety, we are participants in it, and what we participate in, we can dismantle, but only if we're willing to look directly at what we've been avoiding. 1. We wake up without direction. The mind hates a vacuum. When there is no clear purpose waiting for us in the morning, something else rushes in to take its place. Fear, doubt, uncertainty. We open our eyes, and instead of stepping into a defined path, we drift. And drifting is where anxiety thrives. Without direction, every thought becomes a possibility, every possibility becomes a question, and every question becomes a weight. What should we do today? What if we fail? What if we waste time again? The mind spirals not because it is broken, but because it has nothing solid to stand on. This is why those who live with intention rarely wake up anxious. They wake up focused. Their first thoughts are not scattered. They are aimed. They have already decided, long before the morning arrives, what kind of man they will be when the day begins. As Seneca warned, if a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable. Anxiety is the cost of having no port. It is the price we pay for waking up without a target. So we must begin before the morning begins. We decide the night before. We define the mission. Because when the mind knows where it's going, it stops inventing reasons to be afraid. 2. We let the mind run. Before we take control. Most people wake up and immediately hand control over to their thoughts. There is no resistance, no observation, just instant immersion. Whatever the mind produces, they accept as truth. And the mind, left unchecked, does not produce clarity. It produces noise. It replays old fears. It predicts future failures. It magnifies uncertainty. And before we even leave the bed, we are already overwhelmed, not by reality but by imagination. But we are not meant to obey every thought. We are meant to examine it, to challenge it, to decide whether it deserves our attention. As Epictetus taught, it is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them. The anxious morning is not caused by the day ahead. It is caused by the stories we tell ourselves about it. Stories we never question. Stories we never interrupt. So the first act of discipline is silence. Not external silence, but internal. We pause, we observe, we create space between ourselves and the noise. Because once we realize that thoughts are not commands, we begin to reclaim control. 3. We avoid what we know. We must face. There is always something waiting for us, something we've been postponing. A decision, a responsibility, a difficult conversation. And every morning it is still there, unresolved, unaddressed, growing heavier with time. Anxiety is often nothing more than avoidance stretching itself across time. The longer we delay, the louder it becomes. Not because the task is unbearable, but because our refusal to face it creates tension within us. We tell ourselves we'll deal with it later, but the mind doesn't forget. It reminds us, constantly, quietly, relentlessly, until even the simplest morning feels heavy. The disciplined man does not wait for comfort. He moves toward discomfort. He understands that action dissolves fear faster than thought ever could. What we face shrinks. What we avoid expands. So we stop negotiating with ourselves. We stop delaying. And we take one step, just one, toward what we've been running from. Because anxiety cannot survive direct confrontation. 4. We build our lives around what we can't control. We wake up worried about outcomes we have no power over, how others will perceive us, what might go wrong, what could happen later in the day. We try to control what is inherently uncontrollable, and in doing so, we lose control of ourselves. This is the root of so much suffering. Not the event itself, but our attachment to its outcome. We tie our peace to things that were never ours to begin with. But there is a line, a clear, unmovable boundary between what is ours and what is not. Our actions, our effort, our discipline, these belong to us. Everything else does not. When we blur that line, anxiety enters. When we respect it, clarity returns. We don't need to control the day. We need to control how we meet it. That is enough. That has always been enough. 5. We live out of alignment with ourselves. There is a quiet discomfort that comes from knowing we are not living as we should. Not as we could, but as we should. It is subtle, but it lingers. It follows us into the morning and settles in the background of our thoughts. We know when we've been undisciplined, when we've chosen comfort over growth, when we've ignored what we said we would do. And that knowledge does not disappear when we wake up. It greets us. This is not punishment, it is awareness, a signal that something within us is out of order. When our actions and our standards do not match, the mind becomes unstable. It questions us, it doubts us, it loses trust in our own decisions. And from that instability, anxiety grows. So we restore alignment, not through perfection, but through consistency. We do what we said we would do, especially when we don't feel like it, because self-trust is built in those moments, and without self-trust, there is no peace. 6. We start the day, reacting instead of acting. The final mistake is subtle, but it defines everything. We wake up and immediately react, to notifications, to messages, to external demands. We let the world set the tone before we ever claim it for ourselves, and once we are in a reactive state, we stay there. We chase the day instead of leading it. We respond instead of deciding. And in that constant state of reaction, the mind never settles. But there is another way to begin. We wake up and take control before anything else can. We sit with ourselves. We decide how we will think, how we will act, what we will tolerate, and what we will reject. We establish order before chaos has a chance to enter. This is not dramatic. It is quiet, intentional, controlled. And from that control, something powerful emerges. Not the absence of anxiety, but mastery over it. Because the truth is, the anxious morning was never random, it was constructed. And now, step by step, we dismantle it and replace it with something stronger. There is a story often told about Marcus Aurelius, not as an emperor seated in comfort, but as a man waking in the cold, surrounded by war, responsibility pressing against him before the sun even rose. He wrote to himself, not to the world. At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I am rising to do the work of a human being. That line wasn't poetic decoration. It was a weapon. A reminder that the feeling of resistance in the morning is not a signal to retreat, but a signal to act. And if a man burdened with an empire could steady his mind before battle, then what excuse do we have when our only enemy is our own hesitation? Another moment, less grand, but just as revealing. Seneca once described how people suffer more in imagination than in reality. Think about that. How many mornings have we already lived the worst version of our day before it even begins? We sit there, projecting failure, awkward conversations, things going wrong, and none of it has happened. We are exhausted before we've even moved. The anxiety feels real, but it is built on fiction, and the more we indulge it, the more convincing it becomes. There's also the story of Epictetus, a man who started life as a slave. No control over his environment, no freedom in the way most people define it. Yet he made one thing clear. No one could control his mind without his permission. One morning his master twisted his leg, and Epictetus calmly said, "You will break it." And when it snapped, he simply said, "I told you." That level of composure didn't come from luck. It came from relentless training of perception. the ability to separate what happens from how we interpret it. That is the same skill we ignore every morning when we let thoughts overwhelm us without question. Think about a regular morning, not in a palace, not in slavery, just a normal day. The alarm goes off. There's that moment where you could get up or stay down. And what usually happens? The mind starts negotiating. 5 more minutes. I'm tired. I'll start later. And just like that, before the day has even begun, discipline has already lost its first battle. That small decision sets the tone. Because if we cannot command ourselves in that first moment, what makes us think we will command ourselves later when things get harder? There's a powerful example in athletes who train before sunrise. Not because it's comfortable, but because it removes the option of hesitation. They don't wake up asking how they feel. They wake up knowing what must be done. That's the shift. When action becomes non-negotiable, anxiety loses its grip, because anxiety feeds on indecision, not action. The more decisions we leave open, the more space anxiety has to grow. Consider the man who avoids a difficult task, maybe a conversation he needs to have, or a responsibility he keeps pushing off. Every morning, it's still there. It doesn't disappear. It lingers in the background, quietly draining energy. He might distract himself, scroll, eat, watch something, but the weight doesn't leave. It just waits, until eventually even simple things feel heavy. Not because life is overwhelming, but because he has allowed one unresolved thing to dominate his mental space. Now compare that to someone who faces it immediately. Same situation, same difficulty, but a different response. He wakes up, acknowledges the discomfort, and moves toward it. No delay, no overthinking. And what happens? The task is either completed or reduced. The weight lifts. The mind clears. The rest of the day feels lighter, not because the world changed, but because he did. There's also the example of people who check their phones the second they wake up. Notifications, messages, news, an instant flood of external input. And without realizing it, they've handed over control of their mind before they've even stood up. Their mood is now tied to what they see. Their focus is scattered. And the anxiety that follows feels natural, but it's not. It's the result of starting the day in reaction instead of intention. On the other side, there are those who protect the first moments of the day like it's sacred. No phone, no noise, just stillness. They sit, think, reflect. They decide who they're going to be before the world gets a say. That small habit creates a level of control most people never experience. And from that control, anxiety has less room to take hold. Think about how often we tie our peace to outcomes. A job going well, someone responding a certain way, things unfolding exactly how we want. And when those outcomes feel uncertain, anxiety rises. But the problem isn't the uncertainty, it's the attachment. The belief that we need things to go a certain way in order to feel okay. There's a quiet strength in releasing that attachment, in focusing only on what we can actually control, our effort, our mindset, our actions. When that becomes the focus, something shifts. The day is no longer something to fear. It becomes something to engage with, fully, without needing guarantees. Another example, someone who says they want to change but continues the same habits every day. They wake up anxious but do nothing different. Same routine, same avoidance, same distractions. And then they wonder why nothing improves. But anxiety doesn't disappear through hope. It disappears through action, through change, through doing what is uncomfortable long enough for it to become normal. There's also the internal dialogue we carry. The way we speak to ourselves in the morning. Most people don't even notice it. It's automatic, negative, doubtful. I'm tired. This is going to suck. I don't feel like it. And over time, that voice becomes dominant. Not because it's true, but because it's repeated. But imagine replacing that voice, not with fake positivity, but with clarity, with truth. This is what I need to do. This is within my control. I will handle whatever comes. That shift alone changes everything. Because the mind listens, and what it hears consistently, it begins to believe. And finally, there's the realization that anxiety is not something we wait to go away. It's something we move through. It doesn't require perfect conditions. It requires action despite discomfort. The calm we're looking for doesn't come before the work. It comes after we begin. So when we wake up tomorrow and that familiar feeling is there, we don't run from it. We don't distract ourselves from it. We face it. We step into the day with intention, with control, with discipline. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. And over time, something changes. Not the world, not the circumstances, but us.